Welcome to the Asin Manso Slave River site, located about 40 kilometers along the Cape Coast Kumasi Highway in Ghana, Africa. This historic place holds a powerful and sad story. During the transatlantic slave trade, Asin Manso served as a major slave market and a final bathing point for enslaved African people. Here, men, women, and children captured from across the continent were brought to take their last bath on African soil. After their bath, they were marched, sometimes for days, towards the coastal dungeons of Cape Coast and Elmina before enduring the horrific Middle Passage across the Atlantic. Today, Asin Manso stands as a memorial site. It honors the memory of our ancestors, tells the story of truth about our shared history, and invites visitors from around the world to reflect, remember, and reconnect the diaspora. As we tour the site, we will see the river itself, the memory wall, and the graves of enslaved African people whose remains were repatriated from abroad. Let's walk together through this place of memory, healing, and education.
Isaiah Garvey Jr. actually borrowed by Bob Marley. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery, none but ourselves can free our mind. From this land among the people of Benin, Togo, and Ghana, we have this common African proverb we stated: until the tales of the hunt is told by the lions, the hunt will always glorify the hunters. A long time ago, we lived on a very big vast land, and this entire continent wasn't called Africa. The oldest known name of the land was actually Akebulan. Akebulan is a word from Kemet in Egypt, which means land of humanity. Mother of all creation, some say it is the Garden of Eden. Prior to the Europeans' arrival, that was the name. We have been on this land for a very long period of time. At a point, our ancestors fought among themselves for territorial expansions, and due to that, they had war victims. The victims were not enslaved. Rather, they were inducted and integrated into various cultures and traditions, practicing a system called indentured servitude, which was different from slavery. But for some reason, whenever you raise the topic of slavery, people jump into a defense mode. They said Africans were practicing slavery before the Europeans got here. So I asked them the questions: what form of slavery were the Africans practicing? I decided to read about this topic. I did a little research from Patrick Manning, Paul Lovejoy, Professor J.K. Ankwanda, Akosia Adoma Pebi, Professor Ayikwe Ama, Walter Rodney, and various other authors. From their definitions and the examples they gave about the systems we had here before the Europeans came in, I got to realize it wasn't slavery. Indentured servitude was some system that everybody, almost everyone in this whole wild world practiced. So when they fought the battles, they brought the war victims into the land. They were inducted, not enslaved. So then, they were brought into the communities, set aside. They even went into an agreement: 7 years, 15 years, 7 years maximum, you get your freedom back. Meaning freedom was guaranteed for those group of people. They were not placed in chains and shackles. They were not starved. They were not branded. Their names were not stripped of them. When they gave birth to children, the children were kept. Their parents get to keep their own children, because you are not a property. Your child will not be a slavery. In slavery, we have all these things. Slaves were kept in chains and shackles. They were branded. Their identities got stripped of them. Their children were kept. Because you are a property, your child will also be a property. So they will snatch the child away from you and probably sell the child to another plantation to go and suffer. That was their system. But they compared that with our system. A servant and a slave, are they the same? For decades, centuries, we've had our system until the 1400s. When the Portuguese started sailing across oceans, they made contact with this land. First thing they did was to change the name. The name was changed from Akeboland to Africa. And the word Africa, according to historian, it came from a Latin word aprika, which means a sunny and a fertile land. Others believe it came from the Greek origin, which is Afrik, A-P-H-R-I-K-E. It means a land without cold or a place of heat and horror. The West African storytellers here, the griots, the historian, they also believe the name Africa came from the word Afra. And according to the accounts, the name Afra is actually the name of the goddess of the sun, which makes Africans the children of her people. As Africans, we have been blessed with one particular thing. The most important and expensive thing in this whole wild world is actually melanin. The melanin allows us a percentage of the sun into our system. It helps us to heal, grow, and we glow. And that was why people consider us the children of the sun. 1471. That was when Prince Henry the Navigator commissioned Fernando Gomez to bring ships to the coastal zones. Exploring, they came into contact with this land. First thing they did was to change the name of these particular areas too. They named this particular land based on the gold they saw. They started picking them and named it after the gold. So they named it the Gold Coast. Togo, Benin, Nigeria was named the Slave Coast during the transatlantic slave trade. On the west, we had Ivory Coast because of the ivories from the elephants. So practically, wherever these people have been to, whatever they benefited, they will name the land after that. In the year 1481, King João II took over in Portugal. As the new installed king, he decided to build trade centers along the West African coastlines as if the land belongs to him. So he commissioned Don Diego de Azambuja, gave him hundreds of ships, hundreds of builders, and building materials were on board. They came and they docked at Edina in Elmina, approached the king. His name was Nana Kwame Ansah I. When they went to him, he refused to give them the land. He told them he was comfortable with them coming all the way from Portugal to trade with him. But then for them to be here on his land and have a permanent settlement, he doesn't want that. It's for his people. So he turned them down. The people left, but they are very cunning and deceptive. They went and enriched their proposal and came back to him. On countless occasions, he kept turning them down. Finally, he was convinced that the people meant well. So he gave them the land to build their very first trading center. The first thing the people built was the Elmina Castle, with chambers hidden at the bottom of them, which they later transformed into a slaveholding cell. So my question is, what was the main reason for having that castle there? Some people said it was for the storage of goods, gold, ivory, pepper, spices. In a dungeon? So let's be real to ourselves. We have to know. We have to know and then change the narrative. We were targeted. The people rightly came here for the enslavement of the people, and that was why they built those chambers. For decades, they traded. They got gold, ivory, pepper, spices, and they paid our ancestors with nothing. They were given tobacco, whiskey, mirror schnapps, guns, and gunpowder. How much are they? Today, to get 18 carats of gold, you have to spend thousands of dollars. How much is tobacco, whiskey, mirror, schnapps? How much are they? They are almost nothing. So when you weigh the trade, you realize it wasn't a balanced trade. By 1492, the people, the Portuguese and the Europeans made it to the West Indies, which is now the Caribbean. They continued until they got to the area around Massachusetts in the Americas. By 1502, they got there. When they got there, the people were already on that land. The Native Americans were enslaved on their own land, used on plantations like tobacco, cotton, coffee, sugarcane. After the people had formed the New England, they were not doing so well. The natives got exposed to various European diseases. The measles, chicken pox, and various other ones were killing them. So that the people, some of them, the Native Americans, will escape into the woods and they will never return. That was when labor force came crashing. So one particular person called Bartolomeo de las Casas, a Spanish, Portuguese, Roman Catholic priest, came with a suggestion and a proposal that the African men and women across the oceans look stronger than the natives of America. Best option is to go to Africa and get them to come and help them solve their labor problems. And that was why the people were here. And when they came, it was through manipulation and deceit that they got the very first set of enslaved people from this land. They got them through manipulation and deceit. They went to our chiefs, telling them that if you keep having these war victims closer to your land, you are endangering your lives, because these were warriors. They fought. Now that you overpowered them and you brought them into your land, you are exposing your strength and your weaknesses. They will know more and then strike. There is nothing you can do. Let us help you out. We came with weapons. The guns and gunpowders are at our disposal. We would love to provide you with some. Protect your land. In return, you will have to pay us with your war victims. The ancestors, I call them greedy and naive, because they believed those strangers over their own people, and they gave them victims of us out and took the guns and gunpowders. And that's why the people said we sold each other. I believe we did. Because in business, there is something called barter trading. I shall give you something of value for something of value back. And the moment they came to you, they told you they want your victims of wars, they will give you guns and gunpowder. You came with the victims of wars for the guns and gunpowders. What do you think that was? It was a trade for decades. Now when demand started climbing to the highest peak, the Dutch, the Danish, the Spanish, the British, the French, everybody wanted peace. So they came here. And when they got here, they had to fight each other. The European powers fought themselves for nearly 130 years. 1651, the British took over, introducing raiding, kidnapping, ambushing, burning homes and forcing families into chains and shackles. They went all the way to the Northern Territories. The people who were captured from there were moved down south. They've been working for a very long time. We have a historian, her name is Akosua Adomapebi, professor of the University of Ghana, Legon. In her book entitled The History of Indigenous Slavery in Ghana from the 15th century to the 19th century, she made so many details. She gave us so many details, and then also provided a map that suggested that Gold Coast, Ghana had about 63 slave markets. We have Salaga, Sampa, Jenani, Ketekrache, Bonomanso, Techiman, Picoro, Asemanso, Cape Coast Castle, Elmina, Fort Amsterdam, Fort William, Senyabreku, Apam, all the way to the Christiansborg Castle in Osu, Accra, just to mention a few were being used. There was a British historian called W.E. Watt, who was traveling around that same period, kept a travel journal entitled The Short History of Gold Coast. In his book, he stated a lot of the slave markets were functional, but two played a historical role. Asemanso here and that of the Salaga slave market. The distance between the two slave markets is over 400 miles. A journey of over 653 kilometers. The ancestors will have to walk from there to get here. But that's not all. Those who were captured from Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger. Niger is about 1,100 miles. They had to walk down to the south. On their way, they were kept at Salaga, provided food to give them energy. On their way from Salaga, they went through the Mole National Park, full of wild animals. The animals attacked the captives in the chains and shackles. Now the commodities were getting lost. So the captors realized that if they do nothing, they will lose everyone. So they had to protect them. They went looking into the chains and shackles, selected some of the captives who were showing signs of weakness. They took them on a walk, tied them to trees, and they gave them multiple whips. The blood attracted the animals. Whilst the animals were feeding on them, they moved the rest out of the park. They succeeded, but lives were lost. They met a river called Pra. The Pra River is a huge and fast-flowing river. They couldn't cross it because they were shackled. So many of our ancestors got drowned there, and they were buried just at the bank of the river. The women in the chains and shackles. Through the journey, they went through hell. They were being raped and as well subjected to multiple treatments. There were instances where they had to cry because they looked into the eyes of their siblings and they felt heartbroken. These people would force stones into their mouth and then had it tied around their necks. If they wouldn't use that, they would gather leaves into their mouth and shut it up. That way you get to shed tears, nobody hears your voice. When they got here, they were hungry, dirty, skinny, and very, very tired. At this point, they had to feed them not because they were hungry. They fed them because they were looking too skinny. No buyer wants such a person. They provided them food and they looked at the men. All those men with their hairs and beards bushy had to be shaved off using sharpened knives and broken bottles. After that, they will force your jaws open using the device called speculum oris. They turn it until your jaws are widely open. They counted your teeth to get to know how old you are. Group you according to ages before taking you on a walk to the river. The river is down there. It shall take us about 5 minutes to walk there. But before we go, look here. We have the Memorial Wall of Return. On these walls, several names of descendants who have paid us a visit are on the wall. Those who came would love to put their family names on the wall as a way to memorialize their visit and acknowledge their ancestors for their sacrifices. So they will put their family names on this wall. But then, unfortunately, each and every year, it gets full, and then people would love to write again. So the authority normally instruct us that we seal it by painting over it. Coating over it creates another layer, which will allow people to also put their names on. So every year we do that. But then lately, they told us to stop that. We want to do something different. They want to build a wall, a granite, so that people can engrave their name on it. When you engrave, it stays there for a very long period, and others can also visit to see what you have written there, and that's what this wall is here for. Up there, when you were coming, you met the ancestral graveyard, and that graveyard has remains of 3 different people, 2 different individuals, and then we have multiple remains. The first 2, Crystal and Samuel, were brought back here in 1998. Crystal was excavated or exhumed from St. Anne's, Jamaica. She was flown into this land to be buried because she was a native of this same land. She was taken to Jamaica and then enslaved there. When they got there, she wouldn't eat anything. Embarking on a hunger strike, she was caught in the act. The people found her and decided to force her to eat. So they used the chisel and hammer method. They knocked the teeth out, placed the funnel there, dished the food into the funnel. With water, they pushed it down the belly. That way she stayed alive for them not to lose their money. She was a strong woman. Each and every time she's forced to eat, she waits quietly after they have all left. The fingers goes into the throat and she threw everything up. She continued and died in the process. Oral history has it that the dying wish was to be brought back home. So centuries of preserving her remains, which was flown into this land in 1998 together with the remains of Samuel Carson. Carson was one of the very first group of African Americans to serve in the US Navy. He died and wasn't given a befitting burial. His great-grandnephew, Sonny Abubadika Carson, excavated the remains and flew it back in 1998. When they brought them in 1998, 31st of July, they were picked on a bus from the airport. They were going to the dungeon at Cape Coast, but then when they got to the town called Abanze, the road was blocked. The youth of the town came in their numbers to welcome them. They took them to the shore and then held a ceremony for them. They told the leaders none of these ancestors left here on buses. They were not in an airplane. If you had to bring them back, you should have shipped them the same way they were shipped out. So they held the ceremony and took them on the boat across the oceans to the Cape Coast dungeon. The dungeon at the Cape Coast Castle has a door called Door of No Return, which simply means you go through that door and you are never coming back home. All our ancestors who left through that door, none of them returned. But when they got to the back of the door, the youth managed to force it open to bring their remains through. And that was how they created a new name for the door as a door of return. So for the past 27 years, they have been buried there. 2019, the year of return, marked exactly 400 years of African resilience. In the year 1619, the very first documented slave ship docked in US Virginia. So then, the Prime Minister of Barbados was coming back home. To honor the year of return, she came with remains of her ancestors. They were excavated from a mass graveyard, and she flew it back there to be buried for their souls to find peace and rest. So, that's how come we have the 3 graves right there. They are to represent our ancestors who were captured and sent out of this land. They are representing their remains right back home. So, if you have ashes of your relatives with you, if you should sometimes come back and you have it with you, you can go in there and spread it all around, or you take it to the river and allow the river to free their spirit. That's actually why this place was established like this. After the slave trade, it was actually left. But then in order for us to learn about the history and also to pay respect to our ancestors, the government together with the community decided to make it this way so that people could come back and pay respect to their ancestors. We're going to take a walk to the river where they took their last bath. Yeah. It was used back then in the days.
It goes to sleep. See? Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So amazing.
So the
Call it
Jamaicans call it
Shea
Shemamaka.
What do you call it?
We call it Nanabrewa Kataon.
Say that again.
Nanabrewa. Abrewa.
Nanabura.
Abrewa is the old lady.
Ah.
Cover yourself.
Ah.
Old lady, kindly cover yourself. So that plant was used by our ancestors back then in the days as a secret motion sensors.
Ah.
It could tell that somebody have been here.
Yeah. They
And
watch
so
it.
they watch it.
Yeah.
And they use that to fight. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that was how they were fighting the trade back then in the days.
They fought.
Yes. The Maroons.
Oh,
Yeah. They fought. And that's why we still have it here today to tell the story. As we are taking the walk to the river, for some reason people love to take their shoes off and walk there as a way to ground themselves. But then if you are comfortable, yes. So if you are not, you can stay in them and we go to the river. If you feel like going into the river, you can slide it off and walk in there, wash yourself and come back up to put your shoes on. So as we are taking this walk, I want you to ask yourself a very simple question. This question is about us as descendants of our ancestors. Had it not been that our ancestors survived the journey across the oceans to the New World, where would we be? If they hadn't survived the plantations, where would we be? And now that we are here, let's ask ourselves, what do we owe to our ancestors? You keep that thought, we take the walk to the river. And when we get to the river and you need to pray or say something, now you will know what to share with your ancestors. That's what this journey is all about. Currently here at the ancestral river, also known as the last bath. This was where our ancestors had their last ever bath. When they brought them here, they were in numbers, quite a lot of them. In the chains, they would chain some of them to trees, and the rest would be taken to the river for their final bath. When they took them to the river, they still had shackles on. Metal balls added to the chains around their ankles to hold them still, preventing them from escaping. And as they were there, they couldn't do nothing. They couldn't even bathe themselves. All they could do was to help each other. If my hands are shackled like this, I can still wash you. You turn around and wash somebody else. Repeat that until everyone got cleansed. But when the captors saw them, they thought they were trying to free themselves to escape. So they got them separated. And after the separations, they will cut the bamboos and use the leaves as a form of brush on them. Washing them with the bamboo leaves gave them bruises and scrapes all over their bodies. And after they were done, they pulled them up and lined them up here. Allowed them to get dried. And once they got dried, they applied shea butter or palm kernel oil on their skins to make them look shiny and presentable, smooth for the buyers to come here to pick. Those buyers who came were looking for healthy looking captives. So they went into the chains to select them. As selection was being done, they went ahead to put their branding tools in the fire. Whoever is selected will then have to be branded. It's either on your chest, your back, your shoulder, your forearm, or wherever they decided to brand you. They will go ahead and brand you there, telling the public that you are now their properties. All those who were purchased were taken on a walk for about 40 to 80 kilometers to the various dungeons to be shipped out. So many of them were left here too. They were the ones who were considered useless commodities. Because nobody purchased them, they were shot. They killed them here and dumped their bodies all around, left them to rot. It was nature that had the place covered. Personally, I prefer to call the place the bamboo slave dumping site. Others call it the bamboo slave cemetery. And I don't like the word cemetery because they were not properly buried. I'm not going to take you down this way because this is the last bath. You are not here for a last bath. You are here to represent your ancestors to actually wash off this. So you are going down this way to the first bath of return, where you will go into the river, wash your hands, wash your feet, sprinkle the water on your body if you want, and whatever you feel like letting out, you pray about it and let it all go. You pray about the epigenetics, the generational traumas, and all these stuff by letting them go in the river for the river to wash them all off. That's what this is all about. Symbolic.